Well, right along with patriarchy, though, is probably something that most of us still take for granted, um, which is things like monogamy, right? I mean, that's a measure of control, even as it is. To
Right?
say that two people have to commit their bodies to each other forever and always with never
Yeah.
being able to go outside of that, right? And I think that there's healthy things happening in our society where we're starting to recognize that, oh, each person is an autonomous individual and maybe doesn't have to be subservient to another person, even if it's sort of like co-subservience in a partnership.
Hmm.
Like maybe we're maybe we're at a place where we can grant more autonomy, and reduce our control over each other's bodies in general. And I
Well,
think that is happening, not in churches of high control, it's just happening in society.
years ago, I probably would have said, "Yeah, that's a nice fantasy, never going to happen." And I'm still kind of on the fence. I'm like, I don't know if everyone's going to, accept those ideas. But my question is, if somebody else wants to have an open marriage and, fuck whoever they want, I don't see how that impacts anyone else's life in any way. If you
Hmm.
are with a group of consenting adults saying, "Hey, I'm in a marriage, but I don't just sleep with my partner, I sleep with other people," and they do the same, that's totally up to them.
Right.
I mean,
And at some point, that means we have to take responsibility for ourselves as humans, as adults, that is outside of a church of high control, right? Because a church of high control, or society in general, gives these guardrails. And we know the rates of cheating, of not
mhm,
being faithful. And so one might start to think, oh, maybe that isn't actually a natural set point for all of humans.
right.
And
And
and it's about starting to see and honor the human animal
mhm,
instead of trying to hold to some ideal that an imagined deity has set forth for us
yeah.
and executed by that deity's, prophets or whatever. I mean, it it's impossible for me not to see all of that as a control measure, whether it's to get more money coming in the offering plate, or whether it's to make sure that demographics are understood to raise sales, right? Like we might be on the surface behaving and making people think at our church that we're doing all the right things, but just the fact that we've seen all of these super conservative evangelical preachers get caught in the airport bathroom with another dude, or or having affairs, or paying for their girlfriends to get abortions, and all of that stuff. I think we could be like, oh, they're just bad, they're just evil, but like, no, I don't think they are. I think they've been in a situation of high control that does not honor their actual human needs. And
Mhm.
so they're preaching one thing out of the side of their mouth and using their mouth for other things on the other side. It's like because those needs are going to try to get themselves met, right?
Yeah.
And which is why if we honor it, see it, honor it, we can find ways to address those human needs that are healthy and don't hurt people.
Humanity comes out sooner or later.
Right. And it just makes me think a little bit of in our Unpack It series, we've been reading The Missing Dimension in Sex by Herbert W. Armstrong. And he is so determined to make sure people don't think of themselves as animals, like super villainizing the
Mhm.
idea of being animal-like or having instincts even. And
Yeah.
I don't understand it. It's so sad to ignore the human animal that much, because it literally, it's crazy making. It causes it causes us to behave in ways that are not in our best interest, that are not in the best interest of the people that we love, that are not in the best interest of the people we choose to interact with to get our needs met, right? Like, ugh, and that can really run the gamut of like people lashing out in ways to get their needs met that are either harmful to a partner or literally harmful to the person that they're fucking, you know, like being able to see what we actually need and address it in a healthy way is so important for the well-being of all of us.
Well, and recognizing what our needs are. A lot of times those are squashed, and we're not even supposed to think about what our needs are because we have this system in place that tells us you're this, you're this. If you think outside of this, you're wrong. But
Right.
then humanity finds a way to get around. They find loopholes every single time. The first one was a
Exactly.
loophole. I didn't have sex. I'm still a virgin. He stuck it in my butt.
I know. Well, that's exactly it, right? So that's the thing. There was that happening, maybe still is among evangelical girls, is they
Mhm.
were starting to have anal sex because they thought, well, then I'm not doing it according to how God doesn't want me to do it, right? And so this is what I mean when I am talking about how we don't have proper risk assessment and we are so thwarted in making our healthy choices for ourselves when we're trying to abide by rules that aren't seeing the whole picture, when the rules are about control and not about benefit for all.
Look at nuns. Told you can't have sex with a man, really? They're gonna fuck each other.
Like on the whole, you and I consider ourselves straight, and so the LGBTQ experience, in terms of the villainization or erasure,
Mhm.
was not something that we experienced. And so, you know,
Right.
there's not as much that I feel like I personally can speak to
Mhm.
about that, but I do see how intense the choosing to ignore or pretend that they're less than happens to people who are in the LGBTQ community, and how hurtful that is to have who they are, who they see themselves to be found out at some point in their childhood that, like, oh, the way I am, the way I think is bad, and I'm bad. God thinks I'm bad. God thinks I'm the worst. Like, that's, whew.